Hello everyone, and welcome back. Last time on the Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green Unevolved Challenge, things have been going pretty smoothly, with us getting 6 whole badges without any major roadblocks. There's still a lot of game to go though, and things are only bound to get harder as we move along. A refresher for those of you who forgot, our team at the end of the last video was made up of Wap, the Squirtle, and It's Pikachu the Pikachu, both of whom were at the ripe old level of 45. We also had Jared, the level 40 Drowsy, Monkey the Mankey, also at level 40, and another level 40 with Sash the Growlithe. I should probably also go over the rules again, just in case you forgot those as well. We're only allowed to catch and use unevolved Pokemon. For Pokemon that started life as Stage 1 Mons, but in later generations got pre-evolutions like Magmar, Jigglypuff, or our very own It's Pikachu, I'll just go off what the regional dex for the game at hand says. I'm also allowed to level Pokemon past their evolution level, just as long as they never defy God and actually evolve. I'm also going to try and avoid using legendaries to keep things interesting, but that's more of a side mission. With the Fuchsia City gym cleared, my next destination is the distant Cinnabar Island. However, getting there is going to be a bit of an issue, as no one ever taught me how to swim. Luckily, there's a workaround to this inability, and we can find it in the local Safari Zone. This is an area where we're able to catch rarer, harder to find Mons, however, we can't battle them. Instead, we need to try to get the Pokemon in more of an emotional state to be caught, placating it by feeding it snacks and pissing it off by throwing straight up rocks at it. I'll be real, I never really figured out how to get this to work properly, so most of the time I just run away from Mons here rather than wasting the time to try and catch them. I did manage to score a few new friends while I was here though, in the form of a Nidoran and a Tauros who I called Bullsack. Catching Mons isn't why I'm here though, as around the Safari Zone there are numerous harder to come by items ripe for the taking, 2 of which we need to continue. Problem is we have limited time here before we get yeeted out and need to pay to get back in again, and the area is kind of maze-like. The first item we need are the gold teeth, which can be found just lying about. The second one requires us to work our way deep into the zone, to find a hidden away house inside of which a man awards us for our thorough exploration, but with a HM containing the move Surf. This move allows us to traverse bodies of water on the backs of our Mons. The only team member I have who can learn it is Wap, and while I usually steer clear of HMs on main team members, Surf is actually a pretty strong move, being better than Water Pulses aside from having less PP and lacking the chance to confuse, but that's more than made up for by not needing to find an extra HM slave for one move. With this, I used the last of my time in the Safari Zone up before heading back to the beach. On my way, I broke into a local house, home to a man known as the Warden. He's lost his dentures and is in desperate need of some teeth. I got you bro, just let me shove this set I found in the dirt in ya. As thanks, the Warden gives us another HM, this one containing the move Strength, which allows us to move around heavy boulders. I decided to teach this to Sash over Takedown, since while it is a little bit weaker, it lacks the self-damaging effect, which is nice. Plus, again, I just didn't want to screw around with more HM slaves. We now have everything we need to take to the seas on Route 19. This area provides a great opportunity for me to grind up It's Pikachu more, since all the trainers here use water types who are weak to her zaps, eventually getting her all the way up to level 50. I look to the seas to forget all the bad things that happened. Bro, do I need to call somebody? Eventually, my path to Cinnabar Island is blocked by another island, the Seafoam Island, and in order to continue, we need to pass through the Seafoam Cave. This area is why we need Strength, since it allows us to push these boulders down these holes, creating new pathways on the lower levels and changing the flow of the raging water, allowing us to traverse it. While working my way through the cave, I caught myself a Psyduck, who I named Duck Off. That's not the only bird I caught though, as by perfectly working our way through to the back of the cave, we can find one of the 3 legendary birds of the Kanto region, Articuno. As I said in the rules, I'm gonna try and avoid using legendaries, but still, just in case, it's best to catch this thing, and what better of a way than with the Master Ball to keep things nice and simple. Being a bluebird, I call this thing Twitter. Eventually, I made my way to the exit and was able to continue surfing along the water until I finally reached Cinnabar Island. There's not much on this island, in fact, the only house here is an abandoned old mansion, so I don't even know if anyone lives here. There is a Pokemart though, and I was starting to run dry on items, so I decided to restock as well as getting my first max repels, which will come in handy later. Of course, there's a Pokemon gym here as well, but the doors are currently locked, and in order to open them, we need to find a key, which is actually hidden in the previously mentioned abandoned old mansion. This is a pretty cool location, with a lot of atmosphere and really cool lore to be discovered about all the experiments that took place here. I also feel like the encounter rate is a lot higher in here. It seemed like every couple of steps I was taking, a new Wildmon would attack. This is good for XP gathering, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't become a little tiresome, so this is why I brought all those max repels. Between the trainer encounters in here and the wild battles I did partake in, I did manage to score a bunch of new levels, getting Wap up to level 50, Sash to level 43, and Monkey to level 41. Wap also wanted to learn the move Hydro Pump, an extremely powerful move with a pretty low accuracy, which I decided to get Rain Dance for, seeing as I hadn't even used it once in my entire playthrough. But of course, real strength comes with the power of friendship, and luckily I made 2 new friends along the way in Glub Glub the Grimer and the Coughing. In order to get through the mansion, we need to use these statues to activate and deactivate various doors in order to get to the top floor, at which point we can jump down the caved-in area to get access to a staircase leading to the basement, at the back of which we can find the keys to the local gym. Okay, why were these hidden all the way back here? Who the hell stores their keys in the back corner of a basement of an old abandoned building? What's worse is when we enter the gym, the place is full of people, so either someone else had a set of keys and got here first, or they were all inside and just ignoring us when we knocked like we were trying to sell them something. Anyway, this gym has the first puzzle of the game that's not complete garbage much in my opinion, because A, it's not just wasting our time, and B, it's completely optional. There are these machines in each room that ask us a series of Pokemon related questions, and by answering correctly, the doors to the next area will open up without needing to battle any of the trainers. Of course, being the Pokemon master that I am, I chose to battle every trainer in the gym for their tasty experience, as well as answering every single question correctly. Oh, okay, well, come on, who knows what every single TM contains? At the back of the gym, we can find the gym leader, Blaine.
Yo, my name's Blaine, I'm 22, and when I die, I'm going to hell for life.
This guy uses Fire-type mons, which means WAP is the obvious choice for this battle, but since WAP was already pretty well leveled, I chose to go with Monkey since her Rock Slide is also super effective and she could use the levels more. Blaine starts out with a Growlithe, who barely survives a Rock Slide and hits back with a Fire Blast, which almost kills me in return. Since I move first though, I know I can knock Growlithe out before it takes me down. Blaine heals up before my hit can land, but I get a crit with a Karate Chop, bringing it to an end all the same. Next, he sends in a Ponytail, which I don't know if I'll outspeed, so keeping Monkey in is a bit of a risk, but one I'm willing to take. And well, turns out that the gamble pays off, as my first Rock Slide flinches, letting me get off a Karate Chop to finish this thing off. Since that worked out so well, I decided to keep rolling the dice and keep Monkey in for his Rapidash, but I'm not a complete idiot, so I make sure to heal up on my first turn. Well, it's a good thing I did, since he goes for a Fire Blast, bringing Monkey down to 1 HP. To save Monkey's life, I switched into Rattata, using him as switch fodder to safely switch to WAP. Surf was just barely unable to KO, and Blaine healed up on his next turn, meaning my Bite wasn't able to finish it off, but my next Surf did the trick. Finally, he sends in an Arcanine, who, again, Surf isn't enough to knock out, and despite healing WAP up, he eventually went down to a Fire Blast. I then switched into Sashed, and since Arcanine's next attack missed, he was able to easily bring it down, claiming me victory over Blaine. For our victory, we were awarded the Volcano Badge, as well as, of course, a TM, this one containing the move Fire Blast, an actually pretty good move, basically being a Fire-type version of Hydro Pump, so I decided to teach this to Growlithe over Roar. Exiting the gym, a familiar face is standing outside to greet us. Yeah, it's that one Clefairy from that Bill guy's house. How you been, buddy? He asks if we'd like to hang out with him for a bit. Apparently, one of his friends invited him to visit the Sevi Islands, a series of extremely creatively named islands just off the coast of Kanto, and he'd like us to join him. Now, this little side quest is completely optional, and mainly just leads to some post-game stuff. Honestly, I was tempted to skip it since I find it pretty tedious, but it doesn't take all that long, so I might as well get it out of the way. After agreeing, a ship swiftly arrives to whisk us off to the first island, One Island. On arrival, Bill takes us to meet his friend Celio, who's been working on a PC network for the island and is trying to connect it with Bill's PC network on the mainland. Bill thinks he can help out, so offers a hand, and in the meantime asks us to deliver a meteor to a rock collector friend of his over on 2 Island. So I head back to the port, catch a ship to 2 Island, and head for the game corner where Bill's friend is. Bill's friend is in a panic though, as his daughter Listella is missing, so he asks us if we could go look for her over on 3 Island. Just then a biker rides in looking for the rest of his gang to give this quest a little bit of action. We then have to head over to 3 Island where we can find the rest of the bikers gang harassing some of the locals. We have to battle a couple of the bikers back to back without any breaks, but none of their mons are really that threatening at all, so it's over pretty quickly. What was the point of that? I don't know, I genuinely think that the devs realized that traveling from island to island doing a fetch quest was a little monotonous, so chucked this in to add a bit of action. Following the path for a bit, there's a bunch of trainer battles, which are basically all I'm here for since they generally offer more XP than random encounters. By the end of the route, both Monkey and Sash were up to level 45, so I had something to show for this whole thing at least. This route ends in the Berry Forest, which is home to Jared's evolved form Hypno, which, given this thing's fondness for children, seems like a decent spot to look for little Stella. While in here, I found and caught myself an Execute, who I could think of no more of an appropriate name for than Outer Basic. Deep in the forest, we can find Listella, who's petrified by a Pokemon that appeared in the forest, and of course, it's a Hypno. We kick that thing's ass and return Listella to her dad, who are both thankful for us reuniting them. We can now talk to the man to give him that meteorite, and in return he offers us a Moonstone, which is used to evolve certain Pokemon, making it useless for this run. Anyway, I head back to Bill on 1 Island, who's finally done getting the PC up and running and ready to take us home. With that all done, we're finally returned to Cinnabar Island and can get on with the main quest. Surfing from the island up north lands us on Route 21. I decided to mainly focus on leveling up Jared on this route since she was starting to lag behind the rest of my party a little. I had hoped to get her all the way up to level 45 like Sash and Monkey, but ran out of PP for her moves and didn't really feel like swimming all the way back to Cinnabar to rest, so she ended up only at level 43. But by the time we reached the end of the water, we'd actually done an entire loop of the region and arrived back home in Pallet Town. This place takes me back. We should probably go check in with our mum to let her know that we're okay and tell her all about our grand adventure. So I immediately left that dump and continued up until I reached Viridian City. If you remember, this is actually the location of the first gym that we encountered, but the doors were locked back then, and unfortunately, even now, if you try to enter the gym, you'll find that... Wait, what is unlocked? Okay, so a bit of a tangent, but I kind of want to explain some of the behind the scenes stuff here, so skip to this point in the video if you just want to get on with the run. So at the end of my last video, I said that I was about halfway through the game, which was true in the sense that I'd done about half of the main battles, but I didn't realize how far through the main story we actually were. For some reason, my brain added an extra encounter with Team Rocket at the Kanto power station before we could get access to the Viridian gym, but apparently that was just a figment of my imagination. My guess is that I was misremembering the encounter with Team Rocket where we have to defeat a bunch of Electrodes in Soul Silver, and for some reason overlaying that encounter right into this game. I also thought that we needed to visit the cycle path at some point, hence why I said the cycle voucher would be important, but turns out if you progress through the game in the less than optimal way that I did, then you don't actually need the bike at all. This isn't that important, but I wanted to give a bit of context as to why this video is so much shorter than the first part, and why I was so confused that this gym was unlocked already. If I'd known this in advance, I probably would have ended part 1 with Sabrina to keep these videos about the same length. Also, one more thing, I kinda want to confuse the people who skipped this rant, so this is just for them. And so the doctor said that they couldn't remove it, but as long as I didn't strain myself, it shouldn't be harmful. Anyway, this gym focuses mainly on ground/rock types, since there was a pretty heavy overlap between those two in Gen 1. It's kind of got a weird layout with a bunch of paths all leading to the same place, and more of those floor panels from the Team Rocket base, but it's not all that hard to get your way to the back to challenge the leader, who is none other than the one, the only, Giovanni. Yeah, it turns out that running a terrorist cell is just his side gig, and his day job is as a respected figure in the Pokemon battling community. This explains why the gym was closed off until we defeated Team Rocket at Silph Coast, since for most of the game he was off committing crimes and being generally naughty. This battle should be pretty epic, being the culmination of both our gym challenge and the Team Rocket storyline, but honestly this is kind of an underwhelming fight and pretty easy by final gym standards. It has a lot to do with his typing. Being ground type trainer makes him vulnerable to 2 out of the 3 starters, meaning chances are your ace is going to be able to sweep his entire team effortlessly, which is exactly what happened, with WAP OHKOing each of his mons one by one. I don't know, I guess I was just expecting more after how hard Claire was in my last run, but I guess I'm not complaining. For beating him, Giovanni awards us our final badge, the Earth badge, and of course we also get another TM for our troubles. My immediate next thought was to run off and inform Officer Jenny that the respected leader of the Viridian Gym is in fact the leader of a notorious terrorist organization and has assaulted us with animals on multiple occasions, but I guess that can wait, since with this victory we have all the badges that we need to be granted access to the Pokemon League, where we can challenge the best battlers of the region for a chance to be crowned the champion. Before leaving Viridian though, I used Cut to access this guy who can teach one of my Pokemon the move Dream Meter, a powerful psychic move that can leech health from a sleeping target. I wasn't sure if I was going to get any use out of this, but wanted to give it a go, so I taught it to Jared over Disable. Right, with that done, I head east out of Viridian towards the Victory Road, but was soon stopped in my tracks as Hamilton appeared. He's surprised to see that we're on our way to the Pokemon League as well, before mustering up all of his unearned confidence to tell us that he's going to whip us as a warm-up before the league. This battle goes about the same as all of our other encounters. I had to take a turn to switch out of WAP into its Pikachu, but then in a few hits his Pidgeot went down. He then brings in a newcomer to his party, Rhyhorn, who is immediately OHKO'd out the gate by WAP. Next is his ace, Venusaur. I wanted to try out Dream Meter on it, but my Hypnosis failed to put it to sleep, leading to it getting off a couple of growths to raise its special attack. I switched to using Psychic, but thanks to Venusaur's increased damage from growth, it was able to knock Jared out first. Not a problem though, as Sash was able to finish it off with a Flame Wheel. Next he sends in a Gyarados who its Pikachu could easily defeat, but is currently too injured to risk bringing in, so instead I switched to Mr. Nibble to heal her up, before switching into its Pikachu, who immediately outspeeds Sunoco's. His Growlithe is once again easily defeated by WAP, and Alakazam is a bit of a pain, managing to knock out WAP, but is then taken out by its Pikachu. Of course, even with another defeat by us to his name, Hamilton isn't deterred, saying that he's ready for the league and that we need more practice. What's your problem, dude? Feels like I'm battling the bloody Black Knight here. On the tail end of Route 22, we find a series of gates, each of which we can only travel through by holding a specific league badge, all of which we have, earning us a right to pass through, eventually leading us to the Victory Road. This cave is the last track standing between us and our destiny. We have to push around a bunch of boulders to activate switches to clear a path forward for us, so you'll want to make sure that you have a Pokemon with strength, which luckily I do. Being a cave, of course, there are a lot of wild Pokemon spawns in here, but I only bothered to catch a Machop, who I was gonna call Punchy, but thanks to a misclick remained unnamed. This cave is also home to a lot of the elite trainer class, the Cool Trainer. These guys and gals are way stronger than your standard trainers and can actually be kind of tough to knock out, which led me needing to run back to the Pokemon Center to rest a couple of times, which is really annoying since the closest one is all the way back in Viridian. Still though, I pressed on and eventually reached the end of the Victory Road, from where it's just a short walk to the Indigo Plateau, home to the Pokemon League. This is it. Behind these doors are the best trainers that the region has to offer, and with a little bit of luck, I'll be able to prove myself above all of them. Before I entered, it's finally time to use all the stat buffing items that I've been hoarding throughout the game. I had 6 rare candies, which I was tempted to pump all into WAP, but instead split them evenly between him and its Pikachu, getting them up to level 60 and level 58 respectively. I also had a bunch of proteins and zincs and the like, which raise a specific base stat of a mon, which I might as well use now as well, spreading them about my team based on which stat would suit them best. I also had a couple of held items I've found along the way, nothing too game changing, but even a small buff is helpful. I gave the Quick Claw to Sash for no reason at all other than that someone should have it, and the Black Glasses to Squirtle to increase the damage of his bites, plus, you know, it's just kind of fitting that he has them. I then sold all the rest of the junk junk that I didn't need and spent every cent I could on heals and revives, and with that, it's time. I made a save in case things go pear-shaped and headed on in to take on the Elite Four. First up is Lorelei, who is a master of Ice-type mons, which as far as typings go, isn't the best, so I was ready for her to be a pushover, but it actually took me a couple of goes. To be honest, all of the Elite Four members took me multiple goes, but it would be a little pointless to go over every single try, so I'm just going to talk about my successful runs. She starts out with a Dugong, who is also a water type, meaning that its Pikachu is probably my best choice. I knew from previous attempts that even if a Thunder lands, it's not enough to OHKO, so I'm better off using Thunder Shock, since I don't have to worry about it missing and it'll take the same number of turns anyway. I managed to paralyze it, but it still gets off a Hail, which will cause whichever mon I have in to take a little bit of damage each turn. This isn't too much to contest with though, and in one more hit, Dugong goes down. Next, Lorelei sends in a Cloyster, who is once again also a water type. This thing is kind of annoying, going for Protect twice in a row, which makes it so that my attacks do nothing, but once I finally can get a hit in, it goes down immediately. Next is yet another water type in Slowbro, who just like Dugong takes 2 Thunderbolts to go down even after raising its special defense with Amnesia. The Hail also finally ended the turn that this thing came in, so I don't have to worry about that damage anymore. Next up is Lapras, who's the first mon that she has who really worried me, being very bulky, meaning that it can stick around a long time. She, just like all of Lorelei's other mons so far though, is also a water type, so its Pikachu is still my best shot. And despite my worry, Thunder both lands and crits, managing to OHKO this thing, which is really the best scenario, since in all my previous attempts it was able to significantly weaken my team going into Lorelei's last mon. And speaking of that last mon, it's a Jinx. I hate this thing. I'm sure all of you already know the story about this thing's original racist design, but I can excuse that. I draw the line at being a pain in the ass to fight.
You can excuse racism.
This thing has the move Lovely Kiss, which can put an opponent to sleep and literally never misses. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but it seriously felt like this move almost always hit, forcing me to take a turn to wake them up and letting Jinx get a hit in on me, only to put them immediately back to sleep again on my next turn. Even if it doesn't put me to sleep, it also has the move Attract, which can infatuate my mons. This is similar to being confused or paralyzed in that it can stop my mons from moving, but unlike paralysis, which can be removed with items, or confusion, which wears off on its own eventually, the only way to get rid of infatuation is to remove the afflicted Pokemon from the battle entirely and then bring them back in, wasting 2 whole turns. It would take way too long to explain how I eventually took this thing down, since it was basically a full team effort with everyone pitching in a little and both of us using a ton of heals, but with a lot of struggle, I was finally able to put an end to Jinx thanks to some burn damage to claim victory over Lorelei. Lorelei admits that she didn't expect much from us, but that we proved her wrong, though she warns us that we've only had a small taste of the league's true power. I healed my team back up to full with the exception of Mr. Nibbles, since even at full health, he can realistically only take 1 hit. I then make a save so I won't have to refight Lorelei if I fail against the next league member, and with that, I move on to the next chamber. Our next opponent is none other than Bruno, who I have a bit of history, or I guess future with, since by the time of Soul Silver, he's the only remaining member of the original Kanto Elite Four, and his team was no pushover, being amongst the toughest fights there. This time though, for the most part, he was a lot easier. Despite being a fighting type trainer, he starts out with an Onyx, which means that by starting with WAP, I can easily OHKO it. He then moves on to an actual fighting type in Hitmonchan. Since fighting is weak to Psychic, Jared seemed like my best bet here, but there's a pretty big level disparity between them. I figured if I could put it to sleep though, its strength is kind of irrelevant, so I went for Hypnosis. Sky Uppercut does a little less than half of my health, and then my Hypnosis actually lands, which surprised me since I think this is the first time it's worked in the entire run. This gave me the perfect opportunity to try out Dream Eater, since A, it's stronger, B, since it only works when an opponent's asleep, it's more PP effective to use it now, and C, it's a free way to heal myself up. It is a bit of a risk though, since Hitmonchan outspeeds and could easily wake up before my attack lands, causing my attack to fail. Still though, I go for it and Hitmonchan continues to sleep, so it lands, doing half of his health. I then go for Dream Eater again, and once again it's able to land, but despite my first hit having done half, the second leaves him just barely alive, but on the plus side, that does heal Jared all the way back up to full. Now with this much health left, I know that Bruno is definitely going to use a potion to both heal and wake himself up on his next turn, so Dream Eater is destined to fail if I try for it, so instead I go for a Psychic, despite it probably doing less damage. As predicted, he heals and Psychic doesn't do as much as Dream Eater. Still though, this lets me get ahead in the damage dealt, meaning that after trading hits back and forth for a few turns, Hitmonchan goes down first. Jared is pretty badly injured though, so despite still being my best option for his next mon, Hitmonlee, I switched into WAP. Hitmonlee outspeeds and goes for a Brick Break, which doesn't do all that much to WAP, and I land a Hydro Pump, which does slightly more in return. He then goes for a Mega Kick, which is slightly more effective, but my next Hydro Pump also lands, and despite the first definitely doing less than half of his health, the second manages to knock it out somehow. It didn't even crit or anything, but I guess I'm not complaining. Next, Bruno brings in his ace, Machamp. I switched into Mr. Nibbles to heal up Jared and then brought her in. Machamp misses its first cross chop, and my Hypnosis once again lands, putting it to sleep. I was able to get off 2 Dream Eaters, getting Machamp a little under half health after it ate its berry to heal, but then it woke up, causing causing my third attack to fail, letting the champ land a cross chop, which despite not being that effective, still hurt a lot. Expecting Jared to get taken out on the next turn, I took the time to heal up WAP. His next cross chop actually misses, so Jared gets another turn alive, but that's corrected on the next turn. I hit Machamp with the Surf, which was probably a bad move since it just put Machamp into the health range to be healed up by Bruno on his next turn. He then starts going for Bulk Up, a move which raises his defense and attack, which scared me a lot since it could easily let this thing become an unstoppable beast. Thing is though, it actually needs to use all those buffs it's giving itself, but instead it just kept buffing itself, which let me just keep attacking until it eventually goes down. From here, the battle's basically over, as his last mon is another Onyx who does outspeed WAP, but still gets OHKO'd, bringing the fight to an end. Bruno is a man of very few words, simply telling us that his job is done and to go face our next opponent, which after once again healing and saving, I do just that. Our next fight is against Agatha, a sweet old lady with a vendetta against Professor Oak, claiming that Pokemon are for battling, not researching, and vows to show us how a real trainer does it. I was expecting this fight to be a total pushover, since Agatha is a fan of the poison type, another less than powerful type, but she surprised me, actually proving quite the challenge. Her first mon is a Gengar, meaning that despite Jared being my best option for the poison type, it's too much of a risk to start with her, since she's weak to its ghost typing, so instead I started with Sash, since his bites are super effective against its ghost typing. To my horror, it started out with a double team, which straight up I think shouldn't be allowed for Elite Four members to have, since it turns a duel of skill into a total luck fest. My first bite does land, and RNGesus must have been on my side, since so does my second, but Agatha does manage to get off a Toxic, causing Sash to be badly poisoned. I then missed a bite, and as if losing turns to missing wasn't annoying enough, Sash gets confused as well. Agatha then raises Gengar's evasion again, but once again the gods are on my side, as I go for a Fire Blast, which not only works through the confusion, but despite already not being perfectly accurate, manages to land, knocking Gengar down. That actually went pretty well. This Gengar usually stuck around way longer on my previous attempts. Next, she brings in a Golbat, who, being a flying type, is weak to its Pikachu. My Thunderbolt just barely doesn't OHKO, which unfortunately leads to its Pikachu getting badly poisoned. Knowing that she's going to heal up on her next turn, I do the same, and since my next Thunderbolt crits, despite healing, my next attack OHKOs her anyway. Her next mon is an Arbok, who I decide to just keep its Pikachu in for. I land a Thunder which does about half and even manages to paralyze it, causing it to be unable to move. My next Thunder also lands, but doesn't quite take Arbok out, and this time it's able to move, getting off a Sludge Bomb, which is able to finish its Pikachu off. I switch into WAP and was kind of expecting Agatha to heal, but she doesn't, meaning a bite finishes off Arbok. Next up is another Gengar, though this time its moveset is a lot less annoying, if you ask me, lacking Double Team. It kept going for Hypnosis, but it literally never managed to land, not even one time, meaning I could just keep freely gnawing on it with Bite. Agatha did use her last full restore on it, and after this she did wise up a little and go for a Sludge Bomb, but then just went straight back to the strat of failing to put me to sleep, letting me easily finish it off. And finally she sends in a Haunter, who does half the work killing it for me, meaning it also goes down effortlessly. That went really well in my successful attempt, but trust me, it wasn't always that way. A lot of the time my team would be crippled by being poisoned, or I'd just simply be unable to land a hit on her first Gengar, while she slowly killed off all my mons. Agatha admits that we have talent before sending us off. After a long haul, we come face to face with the final member of the Elite Four, and wouldn't you know it, it's Lance, a name that'll ring familiar to anyone who's watched my last video. This guy was the regional champion by the time of Soul Silver, making him the final boss, but before that, apparently he was just the leader of the Elite Four. Despite the downgrade in position though, don't be fooled, as this guy wasn't able to claim the championship title for nothing, as his team is insanely strong, and it doesn't help that most of them are dragons, a type that I don't really have any good options against. And make sure to heal and save of course before stepping forward and challenging Lance. He starts out with a Gyarados, not a dragon technically, but dragon adjacent, and also 4 times weak to electric, meaning it gets outsped and OHKO'd immediately by its Pikachu. Next though, he brings in an actual dragon with Dragonair. I switch into Monkey since Cross Chop is surprisingly effective against this thing, but its Hyper Beam is more effective in return, OHKOing Monkey immediately. Hyper Beam requires a turn to recharge though, so whoever I bring in next is guaranteed to get a hit off at least. I bring in its Pikachu, who lands a Slam, knocking Dragonair into the yellow, and since I outspeed, on the next turn I'm able to land another Slam, finishing it off with a crit. Guess I'm seeing double though, since Lance now sends in another Dragonair. This is basically an exact clone of his first one, only now with the ability to paralyze us, which it immediately does against Jared, causing my Hypnosis to fail. I use a Paralysis heal, letting Dragonair use Safeguard, meaning that any chance of putting it to sleep is now down the drain. But clearly I wasn't paying attention since I went for a Hypnosis anyway, which of course fails, giving Dragonair a free chance to hit me with an Outrage. I learned my lesson though and went for a Psychic instead, which isn't that effective, and Dragonair's next Outrage puts Jared into the red. I wasn't ready to give up on Jared yet though, as I know that Outrage will eventually cause Dragonair to get confused, so I healed up and just as I predicted, his next Outrage makes him confused. Doesn't matter though, since Sod's luck, he manages to move through the confusion and goes for Hyper Beam, causing Jared to go down regardless. Whatever though, I bring in Sash and go for a Fire Blast, knowing that I'll get a free chance for damage while it charges up, but of course it misses. My next one lands at least and even manages to burn since Safeguard has worn off, but in return Sash gets paralyzed by a Thunder Wave. Looks like my luck has started to turn a bit though, as I managed to land a Fire Blast through the Paralysis, and Dragonair just sets up a Safeguard, which can prevent statuses but not cure them, causing it to go down to its burn. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. So it heals up and cures its burn, negating all the progress that I've made, and worse still, I'm out of Fire Blast PP, which was Sash's best chance against this thing. I decide to use Strength, and my second one actually manages to crit, getting Dragonair pretty low, but it's not enough for Sash to knock him down first. I then bring in WAP and use Surf, which just barely doesn't knock him out, but on his next turn he actually gets confused from the outrage, and for once actually hurts himself, knocking himself out in the process. That was a frustrating one, and Dragonair's not even his ace. That honor goes to his next mon, Dragonite. I bring in its Pikachu since Dragonite, as well as being a dragon, is a flying type. I go for Thunder, which misses, but it's okay since he misses a Hyper Beam as well, basically making the first turn a wash. My next Thunder lands, but just barely doesn't do a quarter of his health, and he lands a Hyper Beam, which OHKOs me. I do paralyze it at least, which hopefully helps out WAP. I land a Hydro Pump, which does even less than Thunder, but at least Dragonite can't attack back while he recharges. I then go for a Bite, hoping for a Flinch, which does even less, barely knocking him into the yellow, and is entirely negated when he eats a berry to heal. Luckily, he was unable to move thanks to the paralysis, letting me get off another Bite, but this time he was able to move freely to knock out WAP. With no other option, I bring in Mr. Nibbles and use Max Revive to heal its Pikachu. Even with being fully healed, it would only take one Hyper Beam to knock out its Pikachu and lose me the entire fight. I land another Thunder, and Dragonite actually got confused and hits itself. Of course though, this puts him into the range to heal up, curing both of his status effects in the process. Knowing its Pikachu was almost certainly not going to make it, I revived WAP to give me someone to switch into if she went down. His next Hyper Beam misses, letting me land another Thunder to bring him down to half health and even paralyze him again. I then go for a Slam before its Pikachu is finally taken out by a Hyper Beam. I decided to try something a little bit different with WAP and went for Skull Bash, hoping that by raising my defense I could tank at least one attack from this thing. Of course, he has to recharge, so the defense raising turn goes off without a hitch, and the attack itself doesn't do the worst damage. Plus, the paralysis hits once again, saving WAP from any damage. I chose to try the same strat again, and once again the paralysis hits on both the defense raising and the damage dealing turn, and since I outspeed, I'm able to finish off Dragonite with a Bite. Damn, well, I guess all my luck got backloaded to the end of the fight, huh? Lance's final mon is an Aerodactyl, who once again isn't a real dragon, just dragon-like. This thing isn't much of a threat, but it's still pretty stressful, since even one crit from it could cause me to lose the whole fight. While things do get a little bit close with WAP in the red, I managed to take out Aerodactyl in 2 surfs, winning me the fight. Whew, that was definitely the toughest battle yet. My victory was by the skin of my teeth. Even with a win, I have a full team of mons who are in desperate need of medical attention, which left me a little lower than I'd like on revives and heals going into the final fight. Lance is shocked that we were able to beat him, but tells us with this victory, we're ready to fight the champion, Hamilton. So yeah, Hamilton is our final challenge before becoming the new champion, and I'm kind of torn on this. On the one hand, I get what the idea was here. Through our entire journey across the Kanto region, Hamilton's been around every corner, trying to prove he's a better trainer than us, and having our final showdown be against him to prove once and for all who's the very best like no one ever was, feels like a good culmination of his plotline. But that's just the thing, it's his plotline. He's been trying to prove that he was the better trainer, but we've known for a long time who the better trainer is. Every time we faced off against him, we've wiped the floor with him, and not for nothing, we've done it only with unevolved mons. Just imagine how screwed he would have been if we hadn't been holding ourselves back. Sure, we heard a lot of talk about what a great trainer he was, but all of it came from his lips, and frankly, he seemed like a bit of an unreliable narrator. As far as we knew, he was an F-class trainer who never won a fight in his life. The fact he's even capable of becoming the champion is news to me, frankly. I don't know, I want to like this, but it just kind of makes this final battle feel like a foregone conclusion. We've beat him before, and we'll beat him again. So I head on through to face off against him. Hamilton tells us that he's been looking forward to seeing us here. He says that throughout his journey, he's assembled the best Pokemon team there is, and goes on to gloat about becoming the champion before finally taking us on to defend his title. Oh, I guess we're just getting straight into it, huh? Yeah, so I was expecting to get a chance to save and heal my team in the room before facing off against Hamilton, just like I did for all the other Elite Four members before him, but apparently once we enter his room, we're locked into fighting him. This means that I wasn't able to use any of the PP restorative items I would have liked to get some more use out of my moves, but more crucially, if I lose here, I'd be back to my last save before Lance, and I'd have to do all of that fight again. Well, I guess that had some stakes to this fight at least. As always, he starts out with a Pidgeot, and thankfully I already had its Pikachu in my first slot. Thunderbolt does about half its health, meaning that it does get a chance to use a Sand attack to lower my accuracy, but since my next Thunderbolt hits regardless, it was kind of a wasted effort. He then brings in a Rhydon, who is immediately outspent and OHKO'd by WAP, so not much to talk about there. Next though, he sends in his ace, Venusaur, and this was the only team member he has that really gave me any cause for concern. I switched into Jared with the hopes of putting it to sleep and eating its dreams to death. Apparently, since our last battle, this thing has learnt the move Solar Beam, which is essentially a grass-type version of Hyper Beam, taking a turn to charge up before it can be used. Luckily, my Hypnosis lands, meaning that the charge up phase was kind of pointless since the actual attack won't be going off. I started devouring Venusaur's dreams, which does about a quarter of its health each hit. Unfortunately, he wakes up on the next turn, causing my second Dream Eater to fail, and letting it charge up a Solar Beam, which knocks Jared out on the next turn before I can put it back to sleep. Next, I bring in Sash, since he's also a super effective hitter here. I'm still out of Fire Blast PP, so I have to go for Flame Wheel, which crits and almost takes out Venusaur, even getting a burn on it to negate its health regain from eating a berry. What's better is Venusaur already locked into a Solar Beam, meaning Hamilton can't heal, and since I moved first, I was able to finish him off here. His His next mon is a Gyarados. I bring in its Pikachu expecting a quick kill, but it actually managed to survive a Thunderbolt. This is actually a good thing, since Hamilton decided to heal it, and did the same on the next turn after I dropped its health again, meaning Hamilton had less restores going into his last few mons. I actually used my last Thunderbolt PP here, meaning I had to finish it off with a Thunder. Next is Alakazam, who is probably the mon that I'm the second most worried about. I bring in Sash hoping to bite it to death, but Sash immediately got taken out by a Psychic. I then brought in its Pikachu and managed to land a Thunder, bringing it down to a little over half health, but then it also got taken out by a Psychic. I then switched into Mr. Nibbles to use a Max Revive on its Pikachu. Alakazam went for a Future Sight, letting me also get off a Tail Whip before Mr. Nibbles went down, so I decided to switch into Monkey to try and take advantage of his lowered defense. Of course, the Future Sight attack lands as soon as I brought her in, so that was a bit of a dumb move, but luckily when I bring in its Pikachu, she lands a Slam, which immediately knocks this thing out. Lastly is his Arcanine, who I take out immediately with a Hydro Pump to finally finish off Hamilton. This battle was a little harder than I expected, but still pretty easy. He was actually the only one of the final fight, so I didn't need to reset for, which really just makes me wonder how it was that Hamilton managed to get this far. After beating down Hamilton at his very best, he has a little strop about being dethroned from his title as champion as soon as he claimed it. Just then, Professor Oak comes in to congratulate us and absolutely roast his grandson for being such a disappointment, saying he'll never become champion again if he can't learn to treat his Pokemon as partners and not just tools. He then leads us to the Hall of Fame, where our championship team will forever be enshrined for its achievement. Unlike my Soul Silver run, where I felt like there are a lot more mons who also deserve to be honoured here alongside my final team, this time I feel like all the credit goes to this crew. Sure, I did have some other Switch fodder mons for a while, and I also had to teach Flash to Voltorb, but this was the team that really saw me through it, and they deserve all the respect for this achievement in my mind. And speaking of said achievement, can you beat Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green Unevolved? Yep, you absolutely can. Honestly, it wasn't even all that hard outside the Elite Four. I really enjoyed this run, though admittedly probably less than my Soul Silver run. Kanto just feels a lot more dated at its core than some of the later generations, with a more confusing progression path that often left me wondering where to go next, and a much weaker story in my opinion. Still though, I did enjoy my time with it, and I'll definitely be doing more of these runs in the future, hopefully in a more chronological order this time. So if you enjoyed this video and want to be around whenever I tackle Generation 3, why not subscribe, and how about liking the video while you're at it? I also want to shout out a friend of the channel, Animator King Liam. I'd really appreciate it if y'all could go check out some of his stuff. I'll have a link on this end card if YouTube will allow it, and if not, you can find it in the description below. With that said, until next time, I've been Katie Cat, and thank you for watching.